Hey everyone, this is Patrick Lee Scott. I'm here in New York City on this very beautiful day out on the pier, and I just wanted to share with you my entrepreneurial journey, how I got here. I've been in New York for about 7 years now, and my journey really started with computers. I was lucky enough to have a computer since I was probably 4 years old. The oldest photographic evidence I have of it is December 1992. I'm not sure if 3-year-olds can use computers, but if they could, I probably was on it. So I got into computers really early. I was really obsessed and really nerdy, and I kind of wanted to even that out with some music. So my friend Chris was playing guitar, and I decided to pick up bass. But really what I wanted was to be successful and famous. Not at 4, but as I got older. My parents went through this bad divorce, and things just got financially pretty bad for me. And I just, I wanted to be able to take care of my family and my friends, and a lot of people that I grew up with were in similar financial situations. So and it was weird for me because before the divorce they were all, I had a pretty good childhood. My parents were financially stable, and then this divorce really kind of ruined their finances. So that was the beginning of a long journey for me. I just remember going into the school lunch where everyone got their pizzas on Fridays or whatever, and my parents couldn't afford to give me $2 a day for lunch. I used to get the 40-cent lunch. I had a little special card that I'd have to bring up and give to the cashier when I was checking out, and I was so embarrassed. Sometimes I'd skip lunch, but I got a job at McDonald's and I started working, and just so I could pay for my own lunch and avoid that embarrassment. And I've been working ever since I could. As soon as I was old enough, I started. And computers were kind of a way out for me. I was in computer science classes in high school, which was really lucky. A lot of people didn't have that opportunity. But I started with building websites because, like I said, I was in a band, and I figured, it was the year 2000. Pretty much Bob Dylan was on the internet, and that was about it. So I was like, I have a pretty good chance here to get my message out to the world, to show everyone, to reach as many people as, were on the internet. So I was pretty confident that this internet thing would really, really take off for me. So I sought to master the internet. I sought to, advance from there. I went to college for computer science, and I was kind of ahead of a lot of my classmates for doing it for so many years already. So I spent a lot of my time doing distributed systems and studying scalability, and the big thing at the time was is it web scale? Because MySpace was out and it was kind of failing because of their poor choices of technology. Facebook was starting to take over, and reaching billions of people on the internet was kind of still a new concept. And I wanted to know how to do that, not just reach them, but also build systems to support them, to make them the systems that would actually be able to handle that type of load. And also I had to do it on a budget, not break the bank. So after college, I got a job as a UX engineer at a company called Conversion, which was a marketing platform where we allowed our customers to make cross-channel marketing campaigns across social and text and email. And that was kind of my first taste of marketing, which I didn't realize at the time, but I really enjoyed. I was really just in it for the software at that point, and just building cool things, building cool technologies. Eventually we were acquired by Experian, and I went from one of 15 employees to one of 15,000. And around that time, a company from New York reached out to me. I was still living near my hometown, kind of, like 40 miles away from it. And I'd never really thought about moving to New York, but then this company reached out and they were saying they could pay me double of what I was making to come move to New York. And that was in 2012. So in 2012, I moved into New York City. I got an apartment with 6 roommates in a 7-bedroom apartment with a music studio, which is pretty wild. And I took up a job at a fintech company building trading systems for private equity. And after a couple years of that, I was just really, really getting the itch to have my own thing, to start a company. So that's when I started my company called Plus More. And long story short, Plus More failed. And the reason that it failed was because I sucked at marketing. And I know I was the CTO, and that's not really the CTO's role to be a marketer. But if you're gonna start a company, you're an entrepreneur first. You're not a CEO, you're not a CTO. That comes later. You need a business system to optimize and automate before you can start calling yourself those things. It was really too early. So my point being is, as an entrepreneur, you have all these responsibilities, especially as a technical co-founder. People are relying on you to create the technology. And then as an entrepreneur yourself, you're relying on yourself to get people to use that technology. And I was kind of at the mindset of the time that if you build it, they will come. And that's not true. They won't come. And it was really hard for me. I spent almost 2 years on that company. I invested a ton of my own money. I racked up a bunch of credit card debt, and at the end I just really didn't have much to show for it except for a technology platform that only had 1 or 2 customers. And that wasn't enough to cover our runway or our monthly expenses, and so eventually we had to shut it down. And I'd been reading a book at the time that many of you are probably familiar with. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's the life lessons of someone who grew up with a poor dad and a rich dad, also through I think a divorce. I could have those details wrong, probably something like that, right? And the lessons that he learned from his poor dad and from his rich dad were just entirely different. And I realized that growing up, I never got those rich dad lessons. And one of those was, if you want to be rich, don't work for money. Work for something else. Work for skills to use on your entrepreneurial journey. So I decided to take a big pay cut and started working with these 2 guys that I knew who were doing, they were selling training videos online, informational products on basketball videos. And I don't think I'm allowed to share their numbers so publicly, but let's just say they were really doing well for themselves as a 2-person company, definitely in the 2 comma club. So I started building funnels for them, and I didn't know what a funnel was at that point. I just thought it was a series of web pages. I mean, that's really all it is, essentially. It's a sales journey. It's just leading people from step through step and bringing them up something called a value ladder. So, long story short, I was pretty amazed by how much money these guys were making with such a simple product. It was about, my company was 100% product and about 0% marketing, and theirs was 90% marketing and about 10% product. And every month they'd just make it rain with these promotions and sales, and what they were having me make seemed like these email spam trap things that I would never even be interested in. But man, they just bring in customers and just brought them through all this process step by step, and every step of the way they were just offering them the next step. and like bringing them up and along this value ladder. So I went and traveled with them to South Africa, and we were staying in this mansion in Cape Town on the private beach community, and there was a house nearby that people claimed belonged to Madonna. Could never verify or not, but it was all mansions and a gated community. It was really beautiful. I was there with my girlfriend Angela, who's walking around she's over there taking selfies or something. Yeah, there she is. And I was talking to the CEO, and I was just so curious. Like, I know they had no VC funding at my startup. We had a $450,000 round from an angel investor, and up until that point, all the stories of Silicon Valley that I'd heard, it just seemed like that was kind of the only way. Like, if you wanted to make it, you got VC funding, and then you went and started. At least someone like me, who didn't have money saved up, and who had this technical skill. So I was very into like the Silicon Valley mindset. I was in New York. They were calling it Silicon Alley at the time because there were so many tech companies starting up there, and it was kind of becoming a new technical hub. So I was talking to the CEO at our Cape Town mansion, and I asked him, I was like, how did you start this? How did this get started? And he was like, well, and here I am, a systems architect. My entire job is building like complex distributed systems. And I asked him, how do you get this started? And he looks at me and he just says, I really like building systems. And my mind just exploded. I was like, man, I've spent over a decade, probably, I don't know, I've been programming for over 20 years now, right? And this was only a few years ago, so, close to 2 decades of experience building systems. And he says, I just really like building systems. And I was like, God damn, I've been learning the wrong type of systems to build. They're cool, they're great. Any tech company needs them, and as we know, like pretty much every company is becoming a tech company. But the systems I were building, they weren't the ones that made money. They were the ones that supported businesses. And until I had a business to support, that level of effort wasn't really necessary. So after about a year of working with them and building a whole bunch of custom sales funnels that were doing over $1 million a year, I decided I need to do this for myself. Like, I need to do the same thing as they're doing, but with my expertise. And I just wasn't really in a great financial situation at the time to do that. I took a big pay cut to go work with them. My goal was to learn new skills and, go hang out with penguins on the beach in Africa. So, other priorities. But since then, I decided to move back to New York, which is where I am now. I took up another consulting gig, and then I decided to start my own agency and start getting my own customers and start building things for myself. I worked with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and I built up some products for equity. I own a small percentage of a coffee shop in New York, and then one of the consulting clients I got was Anheuser-Busch. And while I was working with Anheuser-Busch, I had the opportunity to join their accelerator program, which was led by the people who made the Lean Startup. Not Eric Ries, but the Lean Analytics book. Eric Ries did the foreword. So it was kind of the Lean Startup teachings in an accelerator format. So it was $50,000 per team to join. And I was allowed to join as a consultant. So I had the role of the CTO without the equity, unfortunately. but it was still like, it seemed like such a great learning experience to me. So that was about a 4-month program over a summer, and we learned a ton about strategies for validating ideas and like getting out to market and talking to people and getting out of the building. It was kind of in line with some of other workshops I did. I'd been to a lean startup conference, and I did a lean startup machine a few years earlier where we came up with the idea of a car sharing app called Cab Pool, because I lived in the Upper East Side, and downtown Manhattan was really where it's at, and it was a long, expensive cab ride to get back to the Upper East Side, and I was like, man, I really just wish someone could split this with me. So, long story short, we were told that wasn't a good idea, which hindsight says otherwise. Speaking of which, we also, in college, I also had another app idea called Geo Creatures, which was essentially Pokemon Go, but no one told us that wasn't a good idea. We did well on that. It was just a school project, and kind of once that project ended, we stopped caring about it, moved on with our lives, and graduated. So, after the end of that 3-month accelerator, we raised a follow-on round. We got investment for another year of runway, which was several $100,000 to fund the company. And about 8 months later, our company was merged into Anheuser-Busch's e-commerce division. So it was a successful exit, but like I said, I was a consultant on the project, so I didn't actually have any equity. And to be honest, a lot of the things that we were doing, even though we were making progress and ticking off the boxes that Anheuser-Busch wanted, we weren't really. I just felt like there was a better way, because I'd been in Africa with these other entrepreneurs, and I saw how they were doing it, and they were so much more focused on providing value for money and scaling when there was success, and not going to VCs and not asking for more money and not relying on other people to grow their business. They did it completely without VCs, and frankly, they had a lot more fun than any company that was using VCs. They weren't like in some cramped up office in Midtown, or they were on the beach in South Africa, like going to clubs and like having parties, and they worked hard too, obviously, but it was on their terms, and that was something that was just really just stuck with me. That I decided at that point that it was time for me to have my third business. The first one was a failure, the second one was a success, but with venture capital, and I didn't have any equity, so it didn't really matter. And the third one, the new one coming up, I want to do it on my own. I'm not interested in getting VC funding. I'm not interested in having other people having a say in how things are run, or why, or how. Because I know the systems now. I know the systems that you need to put out ideas into the world, to test them, and to validate them, to get them out there. In much more efficient ways, to be honest, than what I was being taught in lean startup analytics. Because the way that's really different is using data. Like, they were all about getting out into the world and talking to humans, but it's hard to talk to a lot of humans. It's really a lot easier to get your message into thousands of people's hands through the internet. So even that now has been, that was about a year and a half ago that I left Anheuser-Busch. So I've started my own consulting company called Unbounded Technology. We specialize in helping development teams be efficient and having the systems in place that they need to launch successful companies, to be successful technical co-founders. We offer services like setting up world-class DevOps, automation, continuous deployment, custom split testing, analytics, marketing campaigns, and really like everything you need to be successful as a technical company. I have that experience. I've done it for VCs, with raising over $1 million in my career of VC funding. And there's a better way. You don't need a whole bunch of VC funding. I don't want to get too much into the how in this video because I really just want to tell my story at this point. But there's a way that there's something known as a self-liquidating offer. And basically the whole idea is setting up a series of steps on the internet that draw people through these different levels, these different tiers of value. And you start with something really cheap or free in exchange for an email address, and then that person is your customer, right? If you think about a successful business, they have more than one product, and I think a lot of tech entrepreneurs miss out on that. I think what you see when you look at companies is their front end. You don't really see what's happening in the background. For example, Auth0 is a company that we were using at one of my consulting clients now. And most developers look at them and think, okay, there's an authentication product, and they're right. That is one of their products, but it's just the front end, right? You come in on a free trial, eventually you upgrade to their pro plan, eventually you upgrade to their enterprise plan. And on their back end, the things that they're not advertising, the things that they tell you after, once you're involved, once you're a part of their system, is they have training and business intensives and all of these higher level services where they have people come in and help you with your strategy and implement the things, right? And that's an example of a value ladder, right? They start with a free trial and they ascend you to these different levels where they're providing you even more and more value. So, with that being said, I'm pretty excited. I'm working on a couple of projects. One is called Cloud Native Institute, and in that I plan to teach technical co-founders and technical entrepreneurs and lead engineers the skills they need to automate their success from a technical standpoint, the skills they need to actually measure and get data on all of the pieces needed to become a successful entrepreneur, and how to kind of progress from an idea into a value ladder, and how to structure your offers and how to get traffic. The funny thing about traffic is people think that they need to create it. It's not true at all. It's kind of like building a new highway to get people to come to your store. It's not something you do, right? You buy a store that's off of the highway where the traffic already is. You put billboards on the highway telling them to get off the next exit because there's already traffic there. And on the internet, it's the same thing. People are already congregating into these spaces, so it's about finding where that traffic is and getting in front of it. So anyways, a lot more coming from me. I just wanted to share my story and tell people, what it is I'm doing and where I've been and where I'm going. So I'm excited for you to join me, to follow my journey of starting my own non-VC funded startup, which hopefully will become my lifelong business. I've been thinking about who I want to serve, and who I want to serve is really, people like me, people who value technical expertise, and are often people come to you telling you that they have a great idea and they want you to start a company, and you have all the skills that you need to build anything. I want to show you how to build it in the right way, where it's profitable and where you can travel the world on your terms and do everything you want on your own terms, because it's entirely possible. We live in a globalized economy. you can take advantage of that. I think so many engineers get caught up on this idea of how do I do this? Every time some new challenge comes up, they're like, how do I do that? And it's not about how, it's about who. It's about finding that person that can take you to the next level. And I practice what I preach, you know. I went and joined a $30,000 a year coaching program for business and marketing and entrepreneurs. I want to share all of those lessons with my followers, and I want to help you guys be the entrepreneur that you want to be the technical co-founder, like the one who's starting their own company and hanging out on beaches and mansions in Africa. Anyways, everyone, thanks for listening to my story. I'm super excited to get Cloud Native Institute up and live. My first course is going to be DevOps Bliss, which I'll tell you my story more about next time. Or if you're impatient, you can head over on to hackernoon.com. I have a whole bunch of articles there, and one about my DevOps journey in specific, which is called My Journey to DevOps Bliss Without Useless AWS Certifications. This is Patrick Lee Scott. Thanks for listening. Bye.